was killing myself with the food I eat, toxic to my health, till I got the news. There's another path that I could choose, and now I...
Welcome to the New Health Conversation television show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios, and it's also going out on Comcast Channel 56 and on ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com. And I'm your host, the moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and I'm here with Peter Greenlaw, as always, on every one of these shows, and Peter happens to be the world's most prominent investigative scientist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve.
And our theme today is why telomeres are the cellular fountain of youth. And our guest today is Dr. Bill Andrews. He is a PhD, and he's the president and CEO of Cellular Sciences. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And I believe you're joining us from the beautiful place called Reno, Nevada. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Well, 4 months ago, Dr. Bill, I didn't even know the word telomeres. And I believe that a lot of our viewers right now that are tuning in live are in the same shoes I was 4 months ago. So let's tell them really what is telomeres and what is the scientific work that you have been doing for 20, 30 years now?
Yes. Well, you know, it is kind of surprising that people don't know about this. I think it's one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time. And we've known about the importance of telomeres for almost 20 years now. It's just been filled with all kinds of controversy on various levels. And so it's really only come out in the forefront in the last few years, where everybody now is thinking, everybody's on the same page, that lengthening your telomeres is a good thing. Telomeres are the very tips of your chromosomes. And if you think of a chromosome like a shoelace, the caps on your shoelaces are the same as the telomeres on your chromosomes. And we all know that when the caps on our shoelaces get short, our shoelaces start to fall apart. Well, the same is true for our chromosomes. When our telomeres get short, our chromosomes start to fall apart. And this results in all kinds of mutations, changes in gene expression, chromosome rearrangements, and this causes aging, and not just aging, but practically every health-related issue you've ever heard of, including cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, on and on and on. There practically isn't a thing I know of nowadays, or anybody knows of nowadays, that isn't connected to the length of your telomeres at the tips of your chromosomes. So my research is based on trying to find ways to make our telomeres longer. And just one quick short statement here, and that's that scientists have already shown that making telomeres longer will actually turn old mice into young mice. And there's been things that have lengthened the lifespan of mice before, but nothing's actually reversed aging until now. And so it's a big promise of what we can do with lengthening telomeres. And that's the whole focus of my company, is to try to lengthen telomeres in humans to reverse our aging and our declining health.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doctor. When we go to your website, on the right-hand side, on the top corner, there are some interesting numbers that I was fascinated by. Could you tell our viewers what those numbers are about?
Well, I don't have my website in front of me here.
Okay. All right. Well, you're talking about 259,474.
Okay, those numbers, yes.
Yeah.
Those are the numbers of chemicals that we have tested, random chemicals that we have tested, looking for chemicals that will turn on the telomerase gene inside of normal cells in the human body. At least the way we're doing is we're testing human cells grown in a petri dish. Now, I haven't mentioned what telomerase is, but I mentioned that telomeres get shorter as we age and our health declines. And it's used to be thought as a result of aging and declining health. Now we know it's a cause of aging and declining health. So lengthening them should reverse them. But we know that in our reproductive cells, our telomeres don't shorten. And this is what we knew over 20 years ago, and this is where I got into the picture of asking, why don't they shorten? And so I discovered this enzyme called telomerase that's inside those cells. And my colleagues won the Nobel Prize for this discovery, or at least for the pioneering work that led up to the discovery in 2009. But we discovered this enzyme telomerase, and it's what keeps the telomeres from shortening in our reproductive cells. And it's really important that it's there, because if it's not there, our children would be born with shorter telomeres than we have, and they'd be older than we have. And even if they weren't older, their telomeres would be shorter, their children's children would be shorter, and we'd be getting shorter and shorter and shorter telomeres every generation. And we wouldn't exist as a species now because we wouldn't have any chromosomes left. So our reproductive cells can't have telomere shortening. So we discovered this enzyme called telomerase in our reproductive cells. When we took the gene and put that gene into other cells, including mice, we found that they stopped aging and their aging was even reversed. And so what we are trying to do right now is we're trying to find a way of producing telomerase in all of our cells without putting the gene in there, because putting the gene into a cell is a very invasive, very traumatic experience that will kill 90% of the cells. So we're looking at a way of turning the telomerase gene on that's already inside our cells. Every cell in our body contains the same genes, and so if our reproductive cells produce telomerase, all the other cells of our body can too. It just, for some reason, that gene is shut off. So we have been screening for chemicals. Well, first we spent years developing a really thorough, high-throughput assay test to test for chemicals that would turn on the telomerase gene. And then we started screening chemicals. That 259,000 number that you saw, that's the number of chemicals that we've screened as of 2008. Now, we've screened a lot more since then. I think we're above 500,000 now.
Yeah, and you're saying that there were like 498 hits, and what does that mean? Or 898 hits, what does that mean?
There were hits, meaning that it was a chemical that caused the telomerase gene to turn on.
Oh, great.
And so we found 900 different genes. I think we're over 1,000 now. We've also gotten into natural products, which I guess we'll come back to a little later.
Yeah.
But most at that time we were just doing chemicals up to about 2008, and we found all these chemicals, and we were able to group them into 39 different families. Like we could look at the structure of the chemicals, and we could say, well, this chemical looks a lot like this chemical. And so by using that, we were able to say that they're part of the same family. They would have like just maybe one chemical bond different or something like that. So we were able to take all these chemicals, divide them up into 39 families. And then we are doing now what is called medicinal chemistry to actually look at these structures, figure out what's common to the ones that work, what's common to the ones that don't work, what's giving side effects, which ones aren't giving side effects, and we're designing even better chemicals. So the 259,000, that was when we were just doing random testing. Now we're testing human-designed, rational-designed chemicals that our chemists are designing and building, and then we're testing those in our things, and we're getting even more potent and less toxic chemicals that are turning on the telomerase gene. We actually think we're about 3 years away from having something that will actually be ready for testing in humans that will reverse human aging.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, Doc. So what I'm really curious about now is, so this sounds a lot to me like if the general public was watching, which they are, like what Edison went through when he was trying to get the bulb to work. So in the same idea, what's the equivalent for you? Explain to us, what would it be for you to have that light bulb go on? What is it that you're hoping to create when that light bulb comes on?
Well, okay, so I'm hoping to create something that's going to lengthen the telomeres and make me and everybody else younger. And not just younger, but actually make us healthier. And, you know, even 2 years ago, I would have laughed at even me saying that. But it's the fact that we've done it now with mice. It was actually done at Harvard by Dr. Rhonda Pinnell. He's actually the head of MD Anderson, which is he's no way, he can't be described as a shabby scientist at all. He actually was able to reverse aging in mice by lengthening telomeres. And these mice, they didn't just look younger. These mice had, their brain sizes gotten smaller. They had lost the ability to remember how to go through a maze. They couldn't reproduce anymore. They couldn't walk around. Their hair was falling out. Their hair was turning gray.
Sounds like me.
They were very old looking and acting mice. But as soon as they lengthened the telomeres in these mice became young again. They could reproduce again.
Wow.
They could remember how to go through a maze, which is suggesting this might reverse Alzheimer's. Their hair color came back, their hair came back, their organs got bigger. It was, as Dr. Rhonda Pinnell was quoted as saying, it was a remarkable reversal of the aging process. So I really have no hesitation to say now that we are going to do this with humans in the next 3 years.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Well, you're going to be not that you're already not a famous person, but I think if you make that happen, everybody on the planet will know who you are.
Well, my goal isn't to become famous. My goal is to become cure my aging and become a wealthy nobody. It's for the first 10 years of this research, we never even told anybody what we were doing. It was just focused on doing the research, and we've only, let's say, become more publicly oriented about what we're doing because of the economic crisis that's hit this country and the world since 2008, and that's made it necessary for us to make ourselves more well-known to get more funding. Before in 2008, we had no troubles getting funding. We had very wealthy investors that were very interested in seeing their aging cured. And but now it's a little tougher for people to invest, so it's a little harder for us to raise the funds that we need.
Got it. Well, we're going to help you with that, of course. So you're in a 10,000 square feet facility, and how many people you have working on this every day?
Right now, we only have 8 people. We had 40 back in 2008, and we had to cut down because of the difficulty in getting funding.
Got it. All right. So let's switch to how did you guys meet? How did this relationship started?
Well, that's a heck of a story. I will say that Bill Andrews was the most difficult person in my entire career ever to try to get on the phone. Okay.
I'm a busy person. Yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's an understatement. Okay. So the real story was I saw a DVD of him. I was in Chicago speaking almost 3 years ago and saw a DVD, and Dr. Andrews was lecturing in Boca Raton, Florida. And I watched 2 minutes of the DVD. I said, I got to get on the internet. I looked up Sierra Sciences, and literally the next morning for 3 months, I called his office 5 days a week, not Saturday and Sunday. And his admin, John Cornell, was politely just pushing me off. Finally, he said, okay, Dr. Andrews will give you 5 minutes tomorrow. And he was serious about this, 5 minutes. So I get on the phone, Dr. Andrews says, hello, this is Dr. Andrews. And he says, you have 4 minutes and 59 seconds. And so, Bill, why don't you take it up from there? Because you thought that really I was this crazy person, that now you know me and I really am crazy. But really, from that point forward, I think was very, very interesting.
Well, all my calls are screened, and I actually have a fictitious extension number and a real extension number. So when people call, they actually call into the fictitious one, and so I don't answer, somebody else answers, and make certain that it's something really important before they'll actually connect it to me. And that's because we get a lot of calls. We are in a field, I mean, it is the anti-aging field, and the anti-aging field is filled with more products that don't work, more quacks and charlatans than anything else. But it's all that's because there's more people in the world that want to find a cure for their aging. And so people are calling us 50 times a day, and I can't answer these calls. So Peter was one of those people at first, we thought, and but he was so persistent that he kept on wanting. So he finally did get a chance to talk with me. But actually, after that 5 minutes, I guess I believed, okay, so he's not trying to find out what we got going here. He's actually looking to see how he can help us. So I took a little more interest in him. We were experiencing the beginning throes of the economic crisis, so we knew we needed help to get funding and spread the word. So, I was still pretty busy, so I kind of still put him off a bit. But he did tell me he was going to be coming up to Reno sometime, and I kind of forgot when that was. But then I turned out to be coming up to Reno from somewhere else. I guess I was coming from Las Vegas to Reno on Southwest Airlines. And I was actually sitting with a sales rep for a company that actually sold telomere-related products. And so she and I talked about telomeres the entire flight. Well, lo and behold, a few seats behind us was Peter Greenlaw. Just happened to be on the same flight. Yeah, exactly. Same on the flight, because he was coming up here to talk. And I had completely forgotten when he was going to be talking. I had no idea he was on the flight. So me and this salesperson got off the flight, and we were at the Reno airport, and we're walking down the hallway to baggage claim. And all of a sudden, this person comes running up behind me, taps me on the shoulder, and goes, "Are you Bill Andrews?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I'm Peter Greenlaw." And my first thought was, "Oh, no." But
that's what I said.
Little did he know.
That's what I said when I met him 4 months ago.
Yeah. So, but we the three of us, me and Peter and the sales rep, walked to baggage claim and talked a lot. And I became more interested in what Peter was having to say. He sounded very intellectual, very smart, knew a lot about health. I was beginning to think, I can learn a lot from this guy. And so I invited him to stop by Sierra Sciences. And so later that day, he did come by, and we talked for about an hour. And he mentioned that he was going to be giving this talk in Reno that evening, and that if I wanted, I was welcome to attend. And I said, well, I doubt it. I usually work until I drop and then go home, sleep for 8 hours, and get up and go back to work. And so I really don't get time to really go out and do things like that. By the way, I work all these hours with the hope, with the realization that someday I'm going to cure aging. For every hour I miss out on partying and socializing, I'm going to make up for later when I'm cured aging.
It's a good plan.
But I tell you, I was so impressed with what Peter had to say about nutrition and supplements, and he was telling me, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I run 50, 100-mile races like once a month, but I was always fat. I was every runner thinks they're fat, so my definition of fat's different. But I did have this gut that I wanted to get rid of, and I had tried everything, Weight Watchers. Maybe I shouldn't be mentioning any names, but the different companies like Weight Watchers, let's say, they did make me lose weight, but I couldn't think, I couldn't exercise, I couldn't do anything when I'm on these diets because I had no energy. Well, Peter told me that I should try his system, and he said that would not give me these kind of problems. And so after listening to him explain it for a lot, I thought, this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing. I'm probably going to want to try his stuff, and I'm going to want to learn more. So, Peter, do you want to take over there? Because,
the part of the story he didn't tell you is when I went to their lab, within the first 15 minutes, he started to talk about telomeres and telomeres and all this kind of stuff, and I went, time out. He says, Peter, what's wrong? I said, what's wrong? I said, tell me this is science fiction. He says, Peter, don't you know what our motto, the mission statement of their company is? We're going to cure aging, we're going to die trying. Seriously, it was like so far over my head. I walked in, they brought me in this big conference room, and the walls were lined with like human genomes, DNA and all that. And it looked like Chinese to me. Mm-hmm. And so then they proceeded, went through the whole thing. And the part of the story he didn't tell you is at that point I'd done about 1,200 lectures all over the world. And I just casually mentioned, look, I'm doing a talk tonight. If you came, I'd love to talk about the telomeres in my lecture. So what he didn't tell you is he comes in 5 minutes before it starts, sits down in the front seat in the front row, and I start sweating because Einstein just walked in the room. Mm. So then at the end of the thing, of the talk, he comes up to me with a bunch of other people, and he's waiting patiently, and they're asking me questions. I'm thinking, I'm done, because this guy he's the smartest guy in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And so he came up, he said, look, I'm really fascinated, and I want to give him credit right here to the world. He said, one of the things that fascinated me so much about what you talked about is there are 4 things that we've identified that speed up aging. And I said, what are those? Toxicity, nutritional deficiency, overweight, and stress. Of course, it went right over my head in those days, which became the Tito's syndrome, which is one of the foundations of our show. So he told me that, but I didn't pick up on it as it related to aging. So what happened is, he said, look, because he runs about 80 miles a week in training. I've still got this 15 pounds in my middle I can't lose. And so he said, look, what would you suggest? So I gave him suggestions about different things that he could put together to do this. And lo and behold, he goes on it, gets rid of the 15 pounds and goes, what the heck's in this? Now he starts asking me questions I can't possibly answer. So I have to get one of my friends that's a nutraceutical chemist to answer his questions. And that's kind of how this whole thing began to evolve and led to the research that they're now doing at Sierra on basically natural botanicals from the earth, hundreds and thousands of them, et cetera. So it's amazing how these sort of little events ended up driving us to the point where we are today, where Sierra is testing now natural botanicals from the earth. Because one of the things I learned from, Dr. Bill was, number one, basically no one knows how old lobsters are. The tortoises live to be 200 or 300 years old, and all we have to do is go to Northern California and look at the redwoods that are 2,000 years old. But he was extremely skeptical because they tested 259,000 chemicals, never imagining that something as simple as, I don't want to make it that like a blade of grass. It's not quite that simple, but that there was something in nature without doing anything to it that could really possibly lead us down this path to living healthier longer. And thank goodness that he trusted me enough to use certain botanicals to help him lose weight and get more energy. And that's how this whole path started and why he's on this show today. And I promise you, when I first met him, it looked like science fiction. And he told me that 5 or 6 years before, people were laughing at him. Well, 2 years ago, 15 pages in Popular Science, and now he's been on the Today Show, and thank goodness he's on our show, the popular show here, that the world is now waking up to this brilliant man and this incredible research that they've done. And the thing is, what he's talking about, they're serious, Steve. This isn't some pipe dream. This isn't like Don Quixote. I've been to their lab. I've seen what they're doing. And then the work of Dr. DePinto at Harvard really opened the floodgates to say, wow, what might be possible. We're certainly not there yet.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the real story of what happened and created this fascinating curiosity on my part. I mean, he's one of my friends now to hang around with him. I joke all the time. When I have a conversation with him, most of the time, I do have a brain hernia because it's like so much information that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I watched several videos of Dr. Andrews, and one of them, I think he was making a presentation to a whole bunch of doctors. I mean, the room was full of doctors.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can tell just from their expressions
yes.
that
their mouths were open, right?
They were paying attention. It's like, oh my God, he's onto something really a breakthrough. He's basically working on a breakthrough. And so once this transformation takes place, and my reaction to it was, when you first told me, is, okay, that sounds fantastic, and I mean, I want to be on whatever it is that he's making, but I want to make sure that, because what's happening right now in the world is that we're all getting sicker and sicker and sicker.
Right.
I don't want to be 130 and 150 and be as sick as everybody is around me. So let's talk about that for a second.
Can I say one thing? Just for the lay people out there, because you're usually the one that says, okay, you guys, translate it into layman's talk. So let's go back to the chromosome for a minute, okay? And I learned all this from Dr. Andrews. So if you imagine the shoelace, okay, which basically was the DNA molecule, and you unwind it and straighten it out, you become the shoelace. Well, end to end, if you imagine each piece of our DNA was like a bead on a necklace, end to end there'd be 100 million pieces, okay, end to end. But it's only the last 15,000, the tip of the shoelace, those are called the telomere. And at conception, you have 15,000. At birth, you have 10,000. And for the rest of your life, you can only lose 5,000 more. Because when you get down to 5,000, basically, again, I learned it from Dr. Andrews, what happens is called senescence. In layman's terms, the cells can no longer replicate. So what they're attempting to do is, number one, to support it. They can slow down the loss of the telomere, number one. That would be the first thing they'd want to do, right? Because you don't want to get to 5,000, right? You do not want to get to 5,000. That's not a good number.
Clear. That's clear.
So, but in the case of what they did is they actually lengthened the telomeres in those old mice, making them young. So in layman's terms, that's really what he's talking about. Now, how they do it, forget it. That's way beyond my pay grade. I don't even want to know. I just want him to tell me that we are making progress down this road. So maybe that'll help you and the viewers, lay people, just to understand that this is not science fiction anymore. This is real. This is really the research that's going on.
Let me just put that hat on again, Doctor. So let me put my viewer hat on again. So are you really saying that if you can create this and I'm getting younger, does that really mean like if I'm gonna have a body and a mind of a 30-year-old, that means I'm not sick, right?
Yeah, yes, but can we go back to the natural products. Okay, so we had mentioned natural products, and Peter had mentioned that it was like a blade of grass, but it wasn't really like a blade of grass, but it really is like a blade of grass. It's just not a blade of grass off of the lawn in your front yard in the United States. It's a blade of grass off the side of a mountain in the Himalayas or someplace in China. It's different type of plants have been shown to have the ability to turn on this telomerase gene in our side of our cells. Now, we had tested over 2,000 different natural products when we first became aware of the importance of natural products, but we couldn't find any of them that actually worked. And then Peter introduced me to a guy named John Anderson. And that's been one of probably the biggest breakthroughs of our work ever since, because John Anderson is, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on preparing natural extracts. So he was going all over the world finding these plants in Italy and India, in China, in Malaysia, and grinding them up, preparing them, and sending them to us. And we were finding out that, maybe 1 in 100 that we tested actually turned on this telomerase gene. And so I don't want to take all the credit here. John Anderson has played just as big a role as I have here in this work and that we're doing right now. And we are just finding new and new natural products every day that are turning on the telomerase gene.
Now, let me clarify. When he's talking about products, he's not talking about a product. He's talking about when you take, let's say, a blade of grass, it contains many phytochemicals. So it's really the product of that natural botanical. That's really what we're talking about, just to clarify. There's not a product on the shelf where you can buy, this blade of grass. It's what's contained. So when he's talking about within that blade of grass, or let's say a flower or a seed, there are properties. Some of them have 100, 200, 300 different phytochemicals. So it's by analyzing those and using them, that's what they call, it's really the byproduct of it. That would be a better way to describe it, just to clarify for the viewers.
Yeah, I understand. So,
exactly.
So what form, whatever it is that you're working on to get this breakthrough, what form is it going to take? How humans are going to take them?
Well, most likely it's going to be a pill in a capsule form, but it depends on the particular ingredient. You never know how something's going to be administered until you actually know what it is, because you've got to find out, does it survive the stomach? Is it something you have to inhale? Does it have to something you have to put under your tongue? Do you have to inject it? Do you have to swallow it? Does that go through your stomach? So we won't really know, but almost certainly, probably 90% certain, it'll be something that's just a pill that you take. And the answer to the other question about, will this actually make us healthier? Will we be what will we look like at 150 years old if we succeed at this? And we're going to look like 24-year-olds, and we're going to act like 24-year-olds, except we're going to be as smart as a 150-year-old that never had any dementia. Okay, so one of the biggest losses in aging is that each human has more information than the entire Library of Congress, and we lose it all every time somebody dies. But now we won't lose it, at least not as soon. And by actually extending our lifespan, we might find other things that start knocking us off, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, might limit our lifespans at 150. But personally, I'll get another 50 years to figure out how to solve those problems. And that's my mission. I'm in this for me. It's like
selfishly, right?
I've
and
always
me. Don't forget Peter Greenlaw.
I get it.
You've all joined. I just love living. I just don't ever want to quit.
Okay, so
living.
Dr. Beal, I'm really curious about who do you have to be? I mean, this seems to me it's such a huge responsibility and accountability, because you're working on something that affects the entire human being, everybody, all 7 billion of us. Who do you have to be every day to do what you do?
To do what I do in terms of my research?
Yeah.
It seems to be a very rare thing, because very few people do what I do. I'm real surprised that we don't have any competition, but you've got to be just extremely open-minded. You've got to be very obsessed, and you've got to be very into really learning the true facts about things, not just hearsay and stuff. You got to, people can say, I told you there was a lot of controversy in this field for a long time. And Peter had mentioned that people were laughing at me. They weren't actually laughing at me, but people were telling me that it was impossible. We will never find something that's going to turn on the telomerase gene. Well, there was at least 5 key scientists in the world, well-known scientists in the world that had said that. And when we found our first chemical that turned on the telomerase gene, that was in 2007, and it was let me think for a second. It was the 57,684th chemical we tested. And so it's called C0057684. And when we found that, we sent it to those 5 scientists and asked them, well, you said we can't do this. Would you test this chemical and see if it turns on the telomerase gene for us? And they all tested it and said, Eureka, it works. And so now when I speak at scientific conferences, I like to put up their names on a slide and then click on their name and show their data, not just our own data. So it's worldly accepted now that we have succeeded at finding a way to turn on the telomerase gene. And because of the fact that so many people thought that was impossible, we now have no competition. And also a lot of people thought that there was going to be too many negative side effects. There had to be some reason why telomerase was shut off, and people had all kinds of theories. And for a long time, people thought, turning this telomerase on is going to kill people. But now we know it doesn't. Now everybody agrees that turning on the telomerase only does good things. And I always say bad things happen when telomeres get short. And it's only good things happen when they get long.
So what is your take on, after working on it for so long already, what is your take on why are we designed the way we are designed? I mean, I'm fascinated every day what a magical machine we are. I mean, I can, of course, say I don't understand how it works. but what's your take on it? Why is it designed the way it is?
All species on this planet have to figure out a way to adapt to a changing environment. And the only way to do that is for there to be lots of differences within the species. So that, for instance, if some poison toxin was spread all over the world right now, maybe 99% of us would die, but 1% of us would survive, or maybe 0.1% of us would survive because we have some combination of genes that made us resistant to this toxicity. Well, in order to have this kind of variability in our genome, we are constantly having to shuffle our genes, which means that every generation needs to be breeding to producing new combinations of genes that never existed before. If that doesn't happen, then we won't survive because we won't be able to survive to a change in environment. Okay, now, imagine if we didn't have an aging process and the older people were already successful, mature, they were smart, they could succeed at competing with others. Now all of a sudden they have babies, and the babies now want to compete, they want to mate, they want to eat, they want to do all these things. Well, they can't because the older, more mature people are competing with them. So in order for them to be successful, the old people have to be eliminated. And that's true for every animal species there is. The old have to be eliminated in order for the young to be able to compete, especially for mates, in order to shuffle our genes so that we can adapt to a changing environment. Mm-hmm. And so that's why every species has figured out some way to knock off its old. Now, it turns out we do it by shortening our telomeres. But not every animal on the planet does it that way. In fact, I only know of about 7 animals on the planet that we've identified that actually age by telomere shortening. That includes dogs, cats, horses, humans, deer, pigs, and sheep. Now, and primates. Let's say instead of saying humans, it's all primates. Other animals, like mice, they age by oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. They don't have any telomere shortening, but they have this terrible machine gun going off inside them, shooting in all different directions throughout their life, wreaking havoc all through them. Okay, it's called oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. And then there's other animals that don't even have that, and they don't have telomere shortening. And we don't, they may not have an aging process, but they still die off because of predators and stuff. And that includes lobsters, as Peter was saying. Lobsters have no known aging process. And people are still looking at it. People never ask the question, how long does an animal live, until about 100 years ago. And so now they're checking these animals, and some animals are showing no signs of any aging. And that includes lobsters, some whales, some birds, some clams.
There's parrots that live to 100 years.
Yeah, parrots. It's like they don't know how long these animals can live. Tortoises. Did you know that Charles Darwin's pet tortoise, Harriet, just died recently at, I think, something like 200 some years old?
Wow.
And it wasn't due to aging. And then there was something like a 130-year-old harpoon found in a whale. I mean, you can't carbon date a whale, but you can sure carbon date a harpoon. And there's some pretty bizarre things that have happened here. So we don't know how long, but these animals still, if they started becoming abundant and having to deal with a changing environment, they will have to be eliminated. And they've got their other ways of being eliminated. It's thought that maybe lobsters actually get eliminated because they lose places to hide, and they get bigger and bigger every time they lose their shell.
Yeah,
and,
fantastic. Well, I didn't. Thank you, Doc. I didn't want to talk about your career, Doc, because I don't think I'm qualified to talk about your career. Although I did read it, so I think we owe it to our viewers that please give us a little summary. What you went through in your life to get to where you are today.
Starting with the story with your dad when you were 10, Bill.
Okay. Well, there was no question about it. When I was a little kid, I was very, very interested in science and medicine and astronomy and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I probably was the only kid in the world that cried on Christmas Day because the telescope that I got for Christmas wasn't good enough. You know? And I made my parents go out and buy me a nice 8-foot reflector telescope that only a serious astronomer would have.
What did your dad say to you when you were like 10? Was you about 10?
Yeah, that was. I was out on the front lawn of our house in Canoga Park, California, looking at the stars, and I was actually running into the house really excited because I ended up finding the moons of Jupiter, which I thought was really exciting. I went and told my parents, and I don't think they knew what I was talking about. And then my father comes out and says, you know, Bill, since you're so interested in science and medicine, what you should do is when you grow up, become a doctor and cure aging.
Wow.
He says, I don't know why nobody's done that yet, he said to me. I mean, he's talking to a 10-year-old kid at the time.
Wow.
I'm 61 now, so that was 51 years ago. He's actually using words like cure aging. And so he was way ahead of his time. Still, people today find that a little bit nonsensical. It's what does curing aging mean? But he was saying he didn't understand it. He was obsessed with living. He's still alive, and I'm still focused on making certain that his dream comes true, that we find a cure for his aging, and my mother too. I just became obsessed with that idea. I was like, wow, a light bulb just came. That is something that I think, yeah, I'll go ahead and cure aging. I'll make that my purpose in life.
Are your parents on the new nutritional protocol that Peter?
Oh, absolutely.
Just wanted to be sure.
My parents are doing everything they can to maintain their health as long as they can, because they don't want to miss the boat. When we actually come up with the ultimate cure for aging, they want to still be around to be able to take it. And so do I. I want them to be around to take it. That's a big mission of mine. It's not just me. I was saying before it was kind of selfish me, but I do want to get it for my parents, my family, my brothers and sisters, Peter Greenlaw, John Anderson.
Don't forget me.
Oh, yeah.
Now you.
Yeah.
But Dr. Bill, seriously, you need to explain like the degrees you got. I mean, I know.
So I was going to go to next time.
Yeah, please do, because it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I needed to like read a book to figure out what he was talking about, the degree. I didn't take the course. I just had to read the book to figure out what he was talking about.
Well, you know, all through high school, college, graduate school, that was my obsession. I wanted to find a cure for aging. But I was kind of reading everything, talking to all the experts, trying to find out what's going on in aging. And I was really convinced that nothing that was ever been studied or suggested about aging made any sense to me. Before I was saying, when you ask how to be me, you have to be really thorough and think about everything. You know, all the 2 and 2s have to add up, or it doesn't make sense. And so there were things I would constantly be thinking about and talking to my roommates and stuff like that back in college and high school. Why would people who live near the equator age at the same rates that people who live near the poles do when they have entirely different environments? Why do cats and dogs age entirely different from humans when they're in the same environment? Well, all these things were questions I was asking, and so things like environmental impacts didn't make sense. We weren't an old truck sitting in a field being exposed to the weather. The other thing is we had cells that divided. Every time a cell got damaged, we had a cell that divided and replaced that cell. Well, trucks don't have that. Okay, so we weren't, there was all the theories about aging just didn't make sense. Even oxidative stress didn't make sense because oxidative stress was mostly due to environmental factors. Well, now, of course, we know that oxidative stress is also very internal, too, which is why mice age tremendously from that. But it still didn't explain why mice only live to be 3 years and humans live to be 80 years. Okay, so there had to be some kind of clock that ticks inside of us. That's what I decided when I was still in high school. When I was and by the way, I was in high school because I was in a boarding school in high school because my parents used to make so much noise when I was a kid I couldn't study. And so I used to get mad at my parents for making so much noise, and when they would act like I was some weird kid, I started begging them to send me away to a boarding school where I could study in peace and stuff like that. So I went to a private boarding school called Kate School in Carpinteria, California. And I'll tell you, that's probably, if I ever, when I do come up with a cure for aging, they're going to get a lot of credit for that. But all through high school, I was obsessed with curing aging. College, graduate school. When I was finally getting my PhD and getting ready to start going on the job market, I started applying to every job that I could find that had anything to do with aging. And again, and this is back in 1980, I found every single lab that I applied to offered me a job. And when I went to interview them to see if I wanted to accept the job, I decided they did not have it. They did not know what they were talking about. When I tried to explain to them my ideas, they weren't interested in hearing about them. And so I decided not to go into the field of aging yet. I decided I've got to do a lot more homework. And so I went into biotech instead and started right away as a senior scientist at a company called Armos Corporation, right after I got my PhD. I got my PhD on a Friday and started as a senior scientist in Armos Corporation in South San Francisco, California, on the following Monday. And then within 2 years, I went and worked at another company called Codon Corporation as a senior scientist again. And at that company, I collaborated a lot with Genentech and Amgen. And so I was actually very closely involved with a lot of the big biotech projects in the early days, including human growth hormone, EPO, which is it's erythropoietin. Both of those are sports-enhancing drugs now, but we had no idea they'd be sports-enhancing drugs when we were working on them. Also, tissue plasminogen activator, which is something all ambulances carry now when they want to treat somebody suffering from a heart attack. These are things that I played a big role in back in the 1980s and early 90s. And so I really got involved a lot in the biotech and actually developed quite a name for myself. But I was still interested in aging, and I still could not find anybody who had any idea about what this clock of aging might be. And then, lo and behold, back in the early 1990s, I went to a conference at the Grand Labakan Hotel in Lake Tahoe, California, in Tahoe City, actually, California. And there was an anti-aging conference going on there, and I was sitting in the audience, and I heard a guy named Calvin Harley talk about telomeres. And he said that telomeres shorten as we age, and they don't shorten in our reproductive cells. And so there had to be some reason for that. And they'd been searching for a year to find out what that was preventing the telomeres from shortening in reproductive cells. And so I was sitting in the audience, and I was just jumping out of my chair. This was it. This was the clock for aging. It had to be. Because after everything I've searched, nothing else made sense. This is the first thing that made sense. And I just thought there couldn't be another one. This had to be it. And so Calvin Harley finishes his talk, and I was at the bottom of the stairs as he was getting off the podium, right there just saying, okay, can I come and work with you to help you discover telomerase? And he knew who I was, and he right away said, yes, we would love to have you come. We've been working for over a year and have made no success at all. And he'd been collaborating with other labs, or had collaborations going on with other labs that weren't academic. They were academic. His was more of an industry. It was actually Geron Corporation. And none of them had been able to come up with the discovery of this enzyme that turns on to telomerase in human reproductive cells. So he said, sure. And I was at a company at the time called Burlex Biosciences, and I thought I was a lifer there. It was such a great company. I thought I would never leave. And I just quit right away and went to work with Calvin Harley. Now my obsession was to find a cure for aging, and this was it. And my place was at Geron Corporation. So I went there. I told Calvin at the bottom of that podium that I will have it. I will have that enzyme cloned and identified within 3 months. And so he gave me the opportunity. He believed that I would do it. And 3 months later and 17 days, 3 months and 17 days later, we had discovered human telomerase. And that I think is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time. I think the discovery that telomeres play a role in aging is even a bigger discovery, but discovering telomerase, and that's what keeps the telomeres shortening in our reproductive cells, was a big discovery. And so we put that enzyme into human cells in a petri dish and showed that they completely stopped aging. And at that time, we were caught by surprise because we noticed that the cells actually got younger. And this is 20 years ago, and it's still, I think, one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time. It just created the promise for a really bright future. Me and my crew, my scientists, went out to have a pizza to celebrate, and while we're eating pizza and drinking beer, we thought, I made a statement, I said, this is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time. We better get a picture. And so I ran down the street, bought a disposable camera, and this is, I think, 1993. Bought a disposable camera. No, it's actually 1994. I just remember, early 1994. And had the guy that delivered the pizza to our table take a picture of us. And that picture is now in a frame in my office, along with an email that one of the scientists working with me, Dr. Bryant Villaponto, wrote to all the people that had been involved in the telomere research in the past, even the labs that we're collaborating with, letting them know that we had actually discovered it and provided the proof that we had discovered it. And so that was, I'm still waiting for the day when that's going to be really, really important. And that's going to become really important when we actually successfully reverse aging in a human being for the first time.
Steve, you're going to remember this day forever. I told you this was now you know, when he was telling me this stuff 3.5 years ago, it was science fiction. It was so far over my head, and I think I'm a pretty thorough researcher, but he was so convincing. And just, I don't remember, Dr. Bill, if you remember what you told me, you said to me, listen, Peter, think of me like Christopher Columbus, and I promise we're not going to sail off the end of the world. That's actually, is that not what you said to me?
Yeah, I mean, I do get dramatic at times. I'm very excited about our research. I mean, it's like I live and breathe this stuff. I just know it's going to change the world, and it's going to change me. I just look forward to enjoying all those days sitting on the beach, enjoying my drinks looking at the sunset as I know I'm not aging anymore.
Because one of his commitments, he won't drink until he's not going to drink again until he finds this. But let me just get through one other short insight into.
I did drink beer that day we discovered telomeres, but I do not drink.
Right.
I have not had a drink in 10 plus years, and I'm going to definitely have a drink when we cure aging.
And you don't smoke either, right?
No. He doesn't. No. That's the thing. When I met him, he doesn't smoke. He's running 80 miles a week. He's eating 3 organic meals a day. He was doing everything you could possibly imagine to do it, to be healthy and all of these things. But we talk about. It's a little bit more dramatic because when he started, when he had this incredible result and lost this weight that he couldn't lose and had all this energy, he really started to ask me questions that seriously had 20 syllables. I had no clue. So when I called up our mutual friend, John Anderson, and I said, have you ever heard of Telomeres or Dr. Andrews? And he said, no. And I said, well, I've got to get back to this guy. Why don't Google Dr. Andrews and call me back in a half hour. Like 4 minutes later, my phone rings, and John goes, you get that guy on the phone right now. And the three of us have talked about this. We talk about that day on that phone call, the world changed. Because had John Anderson not met Dr. Andrews, they wouldn't even be looking at natural compounds. And Dr. Anderson and I, it was like 2 years ago, when he was still, even though we had some success with let's say blades of grass, for lack of a better word, he still said, well, we're never really going to get there with chemicals, et cetera. And
with natural products.
Natural products, right. Natural ingredients, right. And so we stood on a stage a year ago, and he turned to me and said, Peter, I owe you an apology. He said, you were right that there's real hope and real promise in the earth, as John Anderson had predicted. But we talk about that phone call about 3 years ago that literally was another huge turning point. Do you agree with that, Bill? That phone call that day was pretty dramatic?
Now, before then, I was only a pharmaceutical scientist. I did not believe that natural products could ever provide the promise of what I thought synthetic chemicals could provide. I'm still a pharmaceutical scientist, but now I'm also a true believer in the
natural botanicals.
Yes.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
That is absolutely amazing.
I mean, it's like we couldn't make this story up. This is not science fiction. This is really what happened.
Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention that when I did try Peter's system for losing weight, remember that's how when we first met, he was down. It worked. I was out running 25, 35-mile days on his system when every other system would never let me run because I was too weak. And I never had to consume any food. I never had to consume carbs, which really shocked me because every time I go for a long run, I always have to eat carbs, otherwise I run out of energy. And I started realizing that what Peter's system was doing is it was removing the toxins from my fat and allowing my body to burn the fat more efficiently. And I was getting all my carbs from the fat that I was burning. And runners never get that. Runners, you can never burn fat fast enough to be able to continue to run. But on Peter Greenlaw's system, you can actually do that. And I encourage every runner, because every runner thinks they're fat, I think get out there and try this system that Peter Greenlaw has. Peter, I don't know, do you want to discuss that or system?
No, we've talked about it on previous shows. I mean, the last one when we went over like the protein that people can get.
Right.
We've basically, Bill, what we did is we gave them basically a protocol of the things that I suggested you go and get, the whey protein from New Zealand, minerals and things like that. So we've given the audience already a general idea about it, but it's nice for you to say that that it really did work for you, and we just encourage people to say, look, there are things that you can do today. If you know what they are, you can go to your local health food store and you can get these things and put it together for yourself, which is basically, it's not, I'd love to take credit. It's not really my system as much as just the awareness of saying, look, we know that if you combine all of these various things, that probably a good outcome is going to come. And that's really what happened to Dr. Andrews. Had it not been for that, we never would be in the position now where we're testing more natural botanicals to see if we can really impact telomeres, still to be proven, but very encouraged by what's going on.
Yeah, no doubt. And also, let's make sure that we say to the viewers that, and this is your quote, I'm quoting you, that food will never be enough.
That's correct.
And that is absolutely true. I have proven it to myself. And also that the food that we go eat in restaurants and food that we go to the store for, it's not real food.
No,
and people, everybody thinks it's real food. It's not real food. And I'm going to quote Dr. Gray, John Gray, those are all recreational eating.
Right.
Folks.
Well, the thing that I find that's so fascinating about all this, here's a guy, Dr. Andrews, an ultra-marathon runner, running 80 miles a week, doing everything that most people would never consider doing, like he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he drinks filtered water, he's doing 3 organic meals a day. But those nutrients that we've talked about on previous shows, like trace minerals, like whey protein from New Zealand and things, those were things, once he added that to what he was doing, then all of a sudden this miracle occurred, just like what happened for you, not really just me making people aware that if you add these things to what you're already doing, you're probably going to have a better outcome. In an upcoming show, we're going to talk about sprouts and things like that. More things, because the viewers have said, we spent a lot of time talking about the problem, and they got kind of anxious with us that we weren't talking about the protocol. Yeah. So all I'm saying is that Dr. Andrews proved that the protocol, by adding to what he was already doing, made an enormous, that was the missing key, the missing ingredient, to now this weight he couldn't lose, all of a sudden he lost it. I don't want to take credit for it.
Right. No, I get it. And again, for me, and everybody's different, but for me, I'm not that attached to the losing weight stuff.
Right.
Although
it's great.
I like the idea.
Yes.
It's great. But it's the energy, and this is something Dr. Andrews was talking about. I mean, I'm in media, and I'm on shows every day, and I work a lot of long hours as well, usually 15, 16 hours a day. So getting the energy that I need to do what I love to do, which is my passion, and I really got Dr. Andrews' passion for what he does, and there's no way any of us can do what we do, including you, if we don't have the energy to do it.
Right. And it's to his credit that he was impressed enough by what I said in my lecture to add specific things to what he was already doing. It made a huge difference. And I want to really put in a plug that people really want to get even more details. They can go to Sierra Sciences like you did. It's amazing, amazing information.
Just Google Dr. Andrews.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much. The Conscious Hour that we had today is actually over again.
I can't believe it.
And I want to thank our guest, Dr. Bill Andrews.
Thank you very much.
President and CEO of Sierra Sciences, and also everybody that was here in the studio to watch us, and of course all of our viewers. And if there's anything we said, anything we did, especially some of the things that Dr. Andrews shared with us, touched, moved, and inspired you, please go to the new healthconversation.tv website and interact with us, and we'll see you back here again. Until next time, we love you all, and guess what? I'm looking forward to getting younger.
So am I.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews.